Good to go.
Great, thank you, and welcome to the February 9th regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. May you please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the
of
United
States
States of America and
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the secretary, tonight I have the privilege of reading our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land, on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Lassane,
Present.
Director Berg,
Present.
Director Mitchell,
Present.
Director Nichols,
Present.
Student Representative Hussein,
Present.
Student Representative Pilch-Basson.
Thank you, Jamie. Our first item of business this afternoon or this evening, hey, by the way, it's light out still. It's exciting. Is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Salzman, may you please provide an overview of tonight's agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to our public, good evening. Tonight's agenda contains the following: the superintendent's report, a segment for board comments, a segment for public comments, segment for routine business, a segment for strategic progress monitoring, segment for information and discussion, segment for new business, and upcoming agenda items. There have been no changes since publishing the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will go ahead and move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. The agenda is adopted. Thank you. We will move on to section 6.0, which is our opportunity for recognition. And tonight we do not have a recognition, which will take us to section 7.0 in the agenda, the superintendent's report. Dr. Salzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to our community tonight. What an exciting time it's been. A few weeks ago, we started with our students that needed us the most, and then Monday to see our kindergarten and first grade students to re-enter the buildings, and what great energy that has penetrated through our system. I want to take this time to thank the board who allowed us to do this work. It takes everybody, and they've been with us from step one, and to our entire cabinet and CRC team. It took so many meetings and so many thought processes to get where we had to get to. And then to see on Monday, when you come back at making your rounds to visit schools and you see the entire CRC building empty, everybody contributing, everybody assisting, everybody helping to make sure that we had a successful, what we would call an opening day. And to our teachers and to our community, you have been outstanding during this process. You've been with us side by side to make sure that this has occurred. I just want to tell you that teachers like Lauren Clemens, Megan Judson, Patty Joseph, Dolly Gamlin, just to name a few in our system that I saw teaching and doing their best for live teaching and also remote during these past few days. I salute the entire system that did not stop educating our youngsters. And again, the energy has permeated through our buildings and through our system. So blessings to everybody. Keep up the great work. Stay warm. And we'll be following the weather the next few days for all our youngsters and employees. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm sure there's a few students out there that wouldn't mind seeing a little snow on the ground this week. Okay, we'll go ahead and move to board comments. Do any directors or our student representative have anything to share? Updates? Okay, I'm going to call on Director Nichols.
Sorry, wasn't unmuting. Just briefly, I know we have a long meeting ahead of us tonight, so I just want to reiterate, thank all of our teachers and staff, faculty, senior executive staff for all their hard work getting folks back into schools, getting students back into schools, and to the parents out there that are eagerly awaiting their children's return to the classroom and the higher grades. Thank you for your patience. We're trying to do this as orderly and safely as we can. The numbers remain low in Snohomish County and transmission rates. I hope it stays that way. I hope we can all continue to keep doing our part with social distancing and wearing our masks and doing what we need to do so that our kids can get back to school. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Well said.
I appreciate what Director Nichols just said. So I'm not going to repeat it. I forgot to say something 2 weeks ago that on Martin Luther King Day, I did actually participate in an online volunteer program to learn about child and family services in Washington State. Sorry about the dogs greeting somebody outside. And I learned about mentorship as well as some after school programs that Shelley and I talked about, and just glad to learn about things that are available in Washington that I can bring back to the district. And also Becca is adjusting well to Lafayette, and we are adjusting well to having an empty house. So thank the Everett School District for 13 years of almost outstanding education.
Thank you. Director Berg.
Thank you. I just want to echo my fellow directors in saying welcome back, students. It is wonderful that we're able to bring students back in a safe and measured way. I have the privilege, I realized this morning, I have the privilege of talking to a parent in the school district each and every day. There's some kind of way I either talk with them just in passing or about kid stuff, but the message that I've heard loud and clear from so many of our families is that they're happy about the choices we're providing. So there are some families who are choosing to continue to do school at home, and that's fantastic. And there are some families that are choosing to send their kiddos back for in-person learning. So I think that as we go down this journey together, it'll be great to have more data on our website for families, knowing just what's happening in their schools in terms of COVID and other things like that. But I'm excited that we're getting back to sort of a new normal. And I can't thank our teaching staff and our paras and everybody involved enough, because you guys are the reason why we can do that. So thank you.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say, the part about the choices. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Director Lesang.
I would like to also, I appreciate what Director Nichols, Director Berg, and Director Mitchell said. It's wonderful to have the first day of school back in play and kids going to school. Seeing their pictures on Twitter is just amazing, and I'm so grateful to be there. At that point, I'd like to also thank the teachers who work online, who work in the classrooms, the paras who work online and in the classrooms, and all the administrators who come to the aid of the parents in teaching their students. And thank you so much for the hard work you're doing. I look forward to the day when we can say that we have learned so much from technology, but we are all back in class. So I'm looking forward to that day. Let's hope that it comes about soon with safety and health for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lesang. Student Representative Hussein, would you like to say anything?
Oh, yes, I'm having some technical difficulties with my camera, but hopefully you guys can hear me.
I can hear you just fine. Yeah, no worries.
Students are getting settled into a new semester. We had a 3-day weekend, which was well needed. And now we have an idea of what to expect, at least for this semester. We're also doing a lot of stuff for the month of February, just trying to get students' spirit up. We're doing a drive-by or a flyby at Everett High School to pass out Valentine's Day candy for those who don't have a Valentine's during this time. Sammy could be your Valentine's. And we're also doing winter wishes where students submit a form and we basically make their wishes come true. And it was supposed to be done during Christmas, but or the holidays, but it kind of got pushed back. So yeah, we have a busy month, but that's all from Everett High.
Thank you so much. I love hearing about what's going on in school and the creative ways that you're figuring out how to connect with other students and lift the spirits of other students as well during this time. So, and I also just wanted to echo all the comments that have been said about being back in class. And I realized when I was thinking about this earlier in the week that some of these parents are dropping their kindergartners off at school for the very first time. And everyone's nodding. I think we all understand what that looks like and what that means, and just what a special opportunity for them to be able to do that. So very cool. Okay, let's move on. We're on to public comments. Jamie, do we have any public comments this evening?
We have not received any public comments for tonight.
Okay, thank you so much. That takes us to our consent agenda, and I'm going to ask Dr. Salzman to give us an overview of our consent agenda.
Thank you. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts and grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes includes items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider discussion about the policy implication of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of the consent agenda, the superintendent's office received the superintendent's regarding just the December financial reports and the general fund projections. The consent agenda is presented and published for board approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Would any director like to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in new business section of the agenda? Hearing none, we will go ahead with the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. The consent agenda is adopted. That takes us to our strategic progress monitoring. And tonight we have a robust presentation on our our strategic plan mid-year progress report. And I believe Mr. Gunn is going to get us started, and we have quite a cast to help us walk through the different details.
Good evening. Tonight, well, I just wanted to make sure that you can see the presentation up on the screen.
We can see it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
That's great.
So tonight I have the pleasure, along with other members of the superintendent's cabinet, presenting to you highlights of the work we have discussed, planned, and accomplished together for the first half of this school year. From my perspective, it has also been a pleasure to stand together with the superintendent, the other cabinet members, and really all of our staff as we faced on a daily or weekly basis new challenges and opportunities this year. This presentation covers highlights of our work that is described in much more detail in the 11-page mid-year progress report that is attached to board docs. These highlights should be familiar to the board because in some way, either in verbal or written form, board members should have already become aware of and informed about this work by district staff. The 11-page report in board docs also provides an inquisitive reader with a variety of links to more detailed documents in DocuShare and Board Docs if they want to dig deeper into the topics and issues contained in this report. And now I would like to invite Dr. Peter Scott, our Deputy Superintendent, to lead us off with some highlights from teaching and learning.
Thank you, Mike. So all of our strategic work in the teaching and learning area is connected to and anchored by the 4 pillars of strengthening climate, culture, systems, and instruction. And this is really a helpful point of reference for us in describing and prioritizing our work in this area. Instruction is really the center of our work. It's the most powerful lever in improving student achievement. What we'd like to do for you tonight is to highlight some major strategic work in this area to date this academic year. Some demonstrated strengths on the left side of the column there, 95% four-year graduation rate. That's a big celebration. All schools above the regression line for low income level versus achievement percentile. So in other words, our schools are outperforming many other demographically similar schools. However, and we've mentioned this several times this year, what's front and center in focus is that there's significant lands of opportunity. And in many ways, these growth areas in the right-hand column stand in stark contrast to those on the left. For example, proficiency rates in several of our schools where 5 out of 10 kids still are not yet meeting standard. We've seen secondary math and science performance stagnant over several years, and we've seen persistent proficiency gaps by ethnicity, language status, students with disabilities, and students from lower income families. And that really represents our work. Those academic and opportunity gaps, achievement gaps on the right-hand side, celebrating what's on the left, keeping our focus and the eye on the prize on what's on the right.
On October 16th, we held our district-wide Learning Improvement Day. The theme for the day was Stronger Together, Strengthening Practices for Equitable Outcomes. The day reflected our core values and the expertise that exists among our staff to lead sessions related to equity, instructional practices in remote learning, leveraging technology tools, and social emotional learning. The day started with a warm welcome from our superintendent and a powerful launch by Bill De La Cruz, activating the need to build systems of belonging and inclusion in every classroom and across all of our schools. Most astonishing about the day was its scope. It was big. It was similar to a large-scale professional conference held through Zoom in our very own district. 109 courses were led by teachers and content directors, and over 1,700 staff attended. Each school and its teams had time for collaboration and reflection built into the day so as to share what was learned and to identify intentional ways to apply new learnings.
To continue with the aspect of belonging and inclusion that Jeannie just mentioned, I'm going to share a quote by Arthur Chan. "Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, belonging is an outcome." In our equity work, equitable outcomes for each student is our goal. And we have focused on increasing belonging and inclusion throughout our district. We have done this through intensive training on foundational bias and conflict awareness, and increasing training in culturally responsive teaching practices with our staff, with the goal of creating an increased sense of belonging, inclusion, and access for each of our students. In addition to our professional development, we have also been engaging our community in monthly engagement sessions and have started some initial training in understanding foundational biases with our PTA and natural leaders. Another aspect of our work to date is implementing a district equity team and developing a process for all schools to have meaningful equity teams to systematically analyze their progress. Training for this effort will happen in the next quarter.
As an integral component of our work to improve student achievement for equitable outcomes, the instructional review process identified several areas in need of growth and support. On this slide are the 7 themes that emerged from the instructional review process. Chief among them is our district-wide focus on improving Tier 1 instruction mathematics. Increasing rigor and engagement was also identified and are directly related to enhancing the work of our teacher PLCs to monitor and support standards-based learning. Advancing the use of district tools such as performance matters for common assessments and curriculum maps aligned to state standards were also identified. These are tools that PLC's teams need to use to efficiently conduct their collaborative work. Two themes related to equity and equitable outcomes also emerged via the instructional review process, including providing targeted supports for our emerging bilingual students and students with disabilities, and a continued focus on consistent use of culturally responsive teaching practices in every classroom. This system-wide view of teaching and learning practices is essential to providing the human, material, and professional learning resources needed to better serve our students. As we begin the second half of this school year, our schools will continue to work on these themes as they implement their instructional review action plans.
Part of our work around the coordination and alignment of instruction to support gap closing strategies. In Everett Public Schools, we're working to ensure that each student has a comparable experience regardless of their school or their region. To this end, our elementary schools across the district are using the iReady diagnostic assessment and the connected learning tools to help us tailor student instruction along the standards. This is an important strategy to help us close those gaps in our learning. In addition, we've continued to update curriculum in areas like math and science, including the adoption and implementation of the illustrative math curriculum at the secondary level to help increase high quality teaching and learning in mathematics. We're also continuing to use our tools like Performance Matters to help us better understand that mastery of student standards and therefore guide both instruction and intervention for our students. We've also strengthened our strategic partnerships with the continued development of our early learning programs. We are excited to have 63 students, 4 classrooms across the district in our transitional kindergarten program this year. They started in hybrid just yesterday and they're amazingly adorable. But the recruitment of the students has taken place over our website, through social media, and the invitations were available in our top 5 languages. Last year, the district hosted 97 students in 5 classrooms located at View Ridge, Monroe, Emerson, Jackson, and Silver Lake elementary schools. We're excited because a cross-district coalition of Everett, Bellingham, Edmonds, and Highline school districts are planning a remote P3 institute for all of our school leaders in these 4 districts in late April of 2021 to collaborate around the development of the P3 systems in our region to support our very youngest learners and their families as well. So going from our very earliest learners to thinking about post-secondary opportunities, in the summer of 2020, with the uncertainty of ability to host in-person summer internship programs, the involvement in the Everett Careerlink, much like our instructional programs at the time, were redesigned as an online experience. We had 51 employers who took part in the program, and students collaborated with industry and community partners to address authentic project-based problems specific to our region. The course provided valuable communication and collaboration experiences, as well as an understanding of the in-demand career areas in our geographic area. We're always looking to find new ways to grow our teaching staff, and we've partnered also with Everett Community College, the University of Washington Bothell, and the Marysville School District in support of efforts to diversify the participation in the Careers of Education course at all 3 of our comprehensive high schools. This program continues to serve our students in helping them to develop career pathways, allowing us to continue to develop the teacher pipeline for Everett Public Schools.
In preparing for virtual learning this school year, we have been focusing in 4 areas we call the key 4. Our work has been to create focus for our teachers on preparing for how to create and navigate within the digital world for instruction. In Everett, we have been supporting professional development with staff during this first half of the school year and creating a system and focus in these key 4 areas and saying we're going to do these tools well first as our foundation before moving forward with additional tools and applications. This slide highlights these 4 key areas: the virtual classroom with the tool being used as Canvas and the number of assignments posted to the learning management system during first semester. For synchronous instruction, we utilize Zoom meetings where teachers can connect with students in real time. Asynchronous 24/7 instructional access using tools like Canvas, Canvas Studio, WeVideo, which is a screencasting and ability to interact with video. Canvas online discussion boards I see listed here is one tool that teachers have been utilizing quite a bit for engagement outside of the class period. Creation and collaboration, primarily through the Google Drive and Office 365 as a shared space. narrowing the variety of tools utilized to include direction and supports to have readily available. And I share here the information on the recordings housed within Canvas, which are quite extensive. Also, we've added 12 Canvas portals since spring that house training and coordinated instructional maps and key resources for staff to expand beyond the curriculum and the data portal with what you see pictured here on the slide to house important process and system tool information for staff. Infrastructure and support is another key action item in this strategic priority area. And at the start of the school year, we became a fully one-to-one school district with one computer for each student in all of the district's 28 schools. And this is a lot to celebrate. This was a priority for Dr. Saltzman and cabinet to accelerate the timeline to ensure the equitable access for all of our students. And we achieved that in the fall, the beginning of this school year. So a lot to celebrate. To achieve this, we added nearly 2,000 devices at North and Gateway and over 4,000 Chromebooks at the final 7 elementary schools to supplement what they already had and replace older equipment that was out of warranty. We continue to have network security be a focus, updates to detect phishing, malware, firewalls, software updates, knowing that that continues to be a real priority for us. Another celebration I'd highlight during this first half of the year, one of our capital levy project is the completion of the Wi-Fi upgrade in all of the classrooms across the district, with our final elementary schools receiving updated or replacement access points or additional access points for their buildings. Community engagement and communication is a key part to strategic priority 2. After nearly a decade, we completed a website refresh that included some new features and a more updated design with a focus on improved user experience and ease of locating information. We added Let's Connect community sessions each month beginning in January to enhance, beginning at the beginning of the school year with our families and with a different topic each month hosted by our regional superintendents. Another essential component to our parent outreach is parent universities housed on our website and launched in September. By the end of January, we saw over 1,000 unique page views. And the district adopted communication tool was added for outreach for teachers to be able to use the texting feature of the Remind application. You can see how many messages has been sent out in some since we brought that online at the beginning of the school year. Enrollment online is something we have been moving to prior to the start of the school year. We added the feature of people being able to update demographic and contact information. Very exciting for people to move away from the paper and hard copy at home. It's very customizable to age level and adaptable. And to date, over 2,000 updates completed using this tool.
Everett is one of 25 districts across the nation who are members of the Urban Schools Human Capital Academy. As part of our work with this organization, we've developed and implemented a rigorous hiring process for administrative positions using the targeted selection process and behavioral event interviewing techniques. The new protocols resulted in 36% of school administrators hired this school year who self-identified as staff of color. This represents an overall gain of 7% over the past 2 years since we implemented the process. Certificated interview questions are also being updated, working with principals and regionals to focus on best fit scenarios and questions using a protocol similar to that of administrative hiring. We plan to use these updated questions during this spring's hiring season. Additionally, we are updating our interview questions. We are continuing to move from paper to electronic hiring practices. As part of our Grow Your Own, I'm going to highlight a couple of items. We are in our 4th year with the Recruit Washington Teachers Bilingual Educator Initiative grant, where bilingual students are taking education courses at the high school that will count toward an education degree. This program is now at all 3 high schools and is incorporated into the CTE program offerings as Shelley mentioned earlier. Plans are underway to use grant funds to create opportunities for our students to work as paraeducators in our district while attending college to pursue their education degrees. The funds are intended to cover fees for the paraeducator assessment. Students who successfully complete the assessment will qualify to work as paraeducators at Everett Public Schools. And our retention efforts are going well. We have collaborated with our Equity and Access Department, as well as members of the Education Association's Cultural Competency Task Force, and developed and administered a survey to gather information on experiences and perceptions of all of our staff of color. The data collection From the survey will be utilized to develop retention plans based on staff input. We will include our staff of color in the planning, and the survey was just concluded last week. And as a grassroots effort this year, we began sending handwritten notes from the Human Resources Department to new employees as well as all of our staff of color. And feedback has been very positive. They have indicated that they truly appreciate that personal connection.
Mr. Moore, are you muted?
Yes, I am. Darn, I was off to such a good start. In a normal year, I think we would be talking about fiscal activities. When we speak of resource management, we might be talking about bond and levy efforts. But in this particular year, I think we'd all agree that we've walked down a road untraveled. And it really has put our statement of effective resource management to test, because it's not just about fiscal, it's about the entire use of our human capital in what we do. We are 85% staff, and this certainly has been a year of all years. We've talked about it with you with our COVID updates, but when you look at the fiscal aspects, we've done what we can over spring and summer to push our fund balance up, prepare from the unknown, knowing that the state has these deep and dark, gloomy projections out there. We held on hiring when we found out that we were going to have to go fully remote. We have even taken the step to furlough staff in a sensitive way that recognizes that we need to provide them benefits and keep them available to us when possible. We've aggressively sought reimbursement of federal funds, and one of a few districts in the state that has done so before the legislative session to avoid any sort of recapture. We've continued with hiring freezes, and we've actively communicated with our legislature on the needs. We're really happy to see that all this work is coming to fruition, and without question, the human capital aspect of that, the need for us to go and not only find out what we need to do, but who we're going to do it with and how we're going to do it, the mixing and matching, the meeting with unions, that all together bundles into what we would say is a really good celebration of effective resource management. And looking forward, it really has poised us to go into next year, not facing significant cuts, but manageable cuts.
We're going to finish up with an update on our strategic plan refresh process. As you know, this new strategic plan, or the refresh strategic plan, will guide us over the next 5 years or more. And there are 3 phases. We've completed the first phase, the analysis phase, and we are deep into the strategy development phase. We will be bringing that to the board for approval on February 18th, the framework for that. And then we are also right now starting to select and set up training for strategy teams to bring us into the second and third phases of this process. The strategic plan refresh process will be completed by June, where we will be well prepared to begin implementing next year with having identified strategic initiatives, performance metrics, and targets for that work. So with that, I'm going to complete our presentation and offer you an opportunity for comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gunn. And actually, thank you to all the presenters. A lot of information. And I think what struck me the most is how in such a different year, things have changed and things haven't changed. There's a lot of information in there on initiatives that we've begun long before COVID that we move forward with. And then there's a lot of COVID related initiatives that have really changed what we're focusing on this year in particular. So if you could you pull the presentation down, and that will give me an opportunity to see other directors and ask if they have any questions, or a student representative.
I guess I just have one statement. Yeah, Caroline, I completely agree with you about what's changed and what hasn't. And this is an excellent presentation as always. And I also appreciate the fact that while we do have that high graduation rate, I appreciate the slides that show that benefit. We've had ongoing discussions. I know we're going to have continued discussions, so this doesn't require an answer for me today, but the fact that we are paying attention to the 3 out of 10 who are not, the 4 out of 10 who are not. I appreciate that transparency and the fact that we are looking at changing processes for math and ELA and science to ensure that we will get to 10 out of 10. So thanks to the staff here at the CRC, as well as all of the teachers, as they continue to go through changes to make sure we can make sure every student is 10 out of 10. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I've just got a couple questions / comments. The one was for Dr. Bowden. I wasn't sure. So you mentioned that we had previously 97 early learners. What is our current number?
In just the transitional kindergarten program last year, we had 97 students in transitional kindergarten. We had 78 sign up. However, when we went into hybrid status, we have 63 actually attending. So we had a few people who decided not to do it after they had signed up. However, we have 63 students enrolled in that transitional kindergarten program right now in 4 different schools.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to mention for Brian, thank you so much for that one-to-one. I cannot believe we're 100% one-to-one, so I'm thrilled. And then also for that online family portal, I got my emails this week and I kind of thought it was a joke because I wasn't expecting them. And I thought, oh my gosh, we have finally hit like the current modern times of being able to do this online. So as a parent, thank you for making that happen. It's going to be a huge benefit. And then my last thing was for Debbie, and I think I've asked this question before, but I'm not sure if you're going to track it this time around. If we know how many teachers of color will apply, like do we track? We always, we tend to kind of say, hey, we don't have enough in our pipeline. We don't have enough that make it across the finish line. Do we have that number of how many apply versus how many we hire?
We don't get the self-disclosure until after they've been hired. We may, but we are revamping our hiring practices to get that information in advance. So we're working through our frontline system to be able to track that data.
That would be great. And I know we've talked about this before, kind of offline about some potential issues there. And I think I've been really, really encouraged statewide to see more teachers of color going into programs and wanting to work for districts like ours. So I just want to make sure there's no kind of juggernaut or something, keeping them, constricting that funnel, if you will, to get to our district. And if there is, as a director, if we can just kind of figure out a way to help that.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other directors or Ms. Hussein? Director Lassane?
Yes, one question that I do have, and thank you for the presentation. It's very informative and I appreciate everything. So I'm going to break it down in two sections that I have questions on. The first one was on career path partnerships. We mentioned that we had online summer internship programs this past summer. At what point do we start looking at the internship programs planned for this coming summer? Have we started that communication, that process to get our kids lined up for that program?
Yes, we are actually starting right now in working with our community partners in developing our pipeline for summer internships this year. And we are hoping that they will be in person. We are preparing if they are not. So we are currently in the middle of, actually, I believe I just took a look at the final contract today. So we are moving forward with that process, yes.
And that will this time include a teacher pipeline? Is that in connection with that summer career program for internships, or is that a separate program?
So I'll invite Debbie to join in if she'd like to speak about the recruiting Washington teacher pipeline program. So it's a program that we're working and partnered with University of Washington Bothell, the Marysville School District, and Debbie, one other,
Everett Community College. Right.
Thank you. And we're working on utilizing that to help identify teachers who are coming through those programs who are interested in coming and working in Everett Public Schools. And there are also some different components in our comprehensive high schools. Debbie, I don't know if you wanted to speak more to that.
Yeah, I think I spoke briefly, quite quickly, about the bilingual students that are entering in and taking those courses in the high school. And that's where we're trying to figure out how we can track them, because it's information that we can't share from institution to institution. But once they graduate high school here, we want to be able to follow them all the way, track them all the way through their college experience, so we can bring them back to us. So we're working collaboratively with Everett Community College and with UW-Bothell to accomplish that.
And is that going, when you start talking about the online summer internship programs, are we identifying kids that are interested in education through our courses that we offer here, so they can enter into that pipeline, a teacher pipeline, early on in the game, so that they have a connection between here and the college that they choose, or community college that they go to?
So with the Careerlink program, Everett Careerlink was designed as that online experience, and we had 51 employers from the program, some from business and professional services sector, information and communication, and 6 from education, 6 from energy and sustainability. And a couple from medical and health and city government, so that students could collaborate with those industry partners to develop experiences to kind of see if this is where they'd like to go in the future. So it's an opportunity that we provide our students with the internships to give them a little experience. And is this something that you'd like more interest in? Is this the career path that you'd like to develop? So it's participation in those pieces through our CTE programs.
I see. Thank you very much. The next question that I have is for Brian. When we started meeting, talking about the one-to-one, I am so grateful for that. This particular past year has shown that we were able to utilize technology in a very rapid way. A lot of school districts weren't able to ramp up as much as quickly as we did. And I am so grateful that we learned how to engage technology to assist in continuing the process of education. And the things that we did as far as being able to identify and track those who attend classes through technology and where they sit as far as their success in their courses, that is very, very beneficial, and thank you very much for that. I know we didn't talk much about that, but I think that connection is very valuable. Also, the parent university, because of the trying time during this past year, what we were able to do as far as reaching out to parents and continuing to communicate with them, what we were doing and how we are assisting and providing the right resources to their students, that is very valuable. And I can't say it enough. If we hadn't started on that particular track early on, we would be totally behind right now. So thank you very much for what you did in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Nichols?
Yeah, so my question is for Debbie, and I may have asked this before. And first, thank you for all your hard work in the HR department, especially in these challenging times. As part of our Grow Our Own program, what sort of programs do we have for paras to get into more teaching roles, teaching certifications, things like that? Because I know I've spoken to a couple. One in particular stands out to me from Hawthorne, who is an immigrant from another country where he was a teacher in that country, and getting that credential transferred over to the States is kind of cost prohibitive. So I'm wondering if there's anything we're doing in that regard.
We have worked with some of our paraeducators with the translation. Again, we have to be thoughtful about how we can utilize those dollars, but a couple of the things that we're doing right now are revisiting the partnerships that we have with our colleges and universities to again, see what they can do by perhaps coming to our campus and providing classes toward education degrees, some percentages, discounts for tuition, those types of things. So we're revisiting that piece of it. We did do a survey of paraeducators, I guess it was some 3 years ago now. We want to revisit that again. Oftentimes what we're finding with paraeducators is they can't afford, they are working because they need their benefits and they can't afford to take the time off. So we have previously worked with Western Washington University with another grant called the SEED grant, where we had paraeducators actually going through their ed program. And then we hired some rotating parasubs and hired those students into those positions where they could have benefits, and did some stipends and those types of things. So we continue to look at those types of opportunities, and then just working with alternate route programs as well for those paraeducators who actually have a bachelor's degree but may not have their certification.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know what we were focusing, and we're really trying to, increase our teachers of color. And I thought that just because Everett has seen such an increase in immigration from various parts of the world, that it would be a great avenue if that's something that we can, it helps improve different languages that are available. It helps improve lots of different metrics that'll benefit our students. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Student representative, did you want to say anything?
I was just gonna say thank you for the presentation. What really caught my eye was the recruitment and retention, and the decision of where teachers of color would be kind of included in making those decisions and hiring other teachers of color. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one final comment before we move on. As I look through this presentation, I think the thing that really hits me is the fact that in a year when so much has been different and changed and upside down, we have this structure around us that helps to continue moving the work forward. And I just appreciate that we have kept an eye on some of these measurements, even though it could be a year where we just kind of throw up our hands and say, oh, this is too much, we can't do it all. I feel like we've done a really good job of keeping an eye on the ball on some of these really important initiatives that began before COVID, because we're going to come out of this stronger because of this. And so I just want to thank all of you for your work on that and continuing to provide that structure to the board and the updates as well. So thank you. Okay, so I'm going to, we are actually at a point in our meeting where we have a 15-minute break planned, but everyone has been so concise and efficient this evening that we are way ahead of schedule. And rather than break just 45 minutes into our meeting here, I have requested that Mr. Moore go ahead with his budget presentation, and then we'll have a break. And I just wanted to check with the directors to see if anyone has a problem with that. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Moore.
Great way to put the pressure on.
Thank you for your
comment. I'm going to share screen and make sure that I am sharing the right screen. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
How about now?
Nope.
Let's see. That's because I didn't put share.
There we go. That's
okay.
Good.
Okay, we're ready to go. I'm going to switch the camera over to this computer because my slideshow is over here. Yes, this evening we're really going to cover 4 specific areas. Just to acknowledge the community participation in the community outreach. We're going to talk about enrollment as a basis for staffing. We're going to talk about the mix that's going on in the legislature between federal relief funding and then an updated projection that, as I mentioned earlier, is looking much more favorable. So on the 21st, we did have a Let's Connect conversation. The focus was primarily on having our community, asking our community, how can we better communicate with you the fiscal activities of the district? So there was a section on School Funding 101. There was Kind of a follow-up to that on how the world is different this year as we've all experienced it. And then finally, as we know, the emphasis on what we've asked our legislature to do to help us moving forward. While it was a small group, it was intimate, and I thank President Mason for participating with that. And generally what we asked them was, what did you learn that surprised you? Probably not a lot. They just learned more about what we do. They were surprised enrollment had dropped as much as it was, and they acknowledged that they didn't know that we're only one of 11 states that has a supermajority. Some of the questions you can see here, we're integrating into our information on the site. And then what do you see in the future? And I think you speak to it and we hear it. Really what we heard is we've learned a lot of the things, including Seesaw, are something that we should keep in place going forward. When we look at enrollment projections for staffing, this was a focus of the Fiscal Advisory Council meeting in January. And really, you'll hear two different numbers. One of them is how did we compare to the year before? And the second column over here on the right really is how do we compare to what we thought would happen? Well, we thought we would grow a little bit. So depending upon how you hear or what you hear in terms of how far down are we refer to the 805 number because that's really the gap between the enrollment funding and where we're at. Nevertheless, we also know that this is unprecedented, like everything else, even during the Great Recession. And Mike uses this slide and it really does tell a story. But even in that 3-year period, we only declined by 215 students. We haven't experienced this massive reduction in enrollment and the staffing that is still in place associated with that. Moving forward, we've worked with our consultant. I've talked with other districts and their consultants, and generally, we all agree that there is a conservative nature to where we move forward. I know Mike has often talked about, and we'll talk about Mr. Kendrick's high, low, and medium projection. He, along with other consultants, say stay with the low projection. There's really so many moving parts now, including the economy and where people are learning to get their education from. So moving forward, this 353 is the increase in students that we anticipate. This is the number of students we're planning on coming back into our buildings from a budget and staffing standpoint. And you can see the majority of that is in elementary with 313. And of that, the majority of it is in kindergarten. However, when we allocate to our buildings, they will work through that process. So we're anticipating of the 600 we were down from the year before, more than half of that coming back. And so what does that mean for our buildings? You got to keep in mind that while we did reduce or hold on a number of elementary positions, we are still, by formula, we have additional staff about, 10 in elementary, we are 5 over in middle school, and we're 3.5 over in high school. So when we start looking at this lower enrollment and pushing it through our allocation models, for next year, we still need another 400 or 4.5 educators to fill our elementary projections, but we do need to reduce in secondary. We did not hold back on the hiring there. And that combined with a little bit of tightening from a budget perspective, we see from today about 9 less educators in our building. We're confident that through attrition and retirement, we can meet the commitment of no layoffs and no furloughs. So when we look at our legislative progress, we are familiar with our legislative priorities. We've presented them to the FAC, we've presented them to our local legislators, we've presented them to our community. And I think that we're celebrating some of the successes. If those of you on the WASDA legislative call, I'm sure you're in tune with this, but nevertheless, OSPI proposed a plan that mixed ESSER 2, the federal relief funds, with state stabilization funding in order to create a model of covering both transportation and enrollment shortfalls. The legislature has sort of bifurcated it into 2 paths. They're keeping together the enrollment shortfall with the ESSER funding, but they've separated out the transportation funding under Senate Bill 5128. We should all encourage people to support that all the way through. It would distribute to districts about 70% of what the normal funding formula is. I can tell you that's completely sufficient to support our needs. And if those districts that have been open, Eastern Washington, rural, where you are, it does create an opportunity for them to have a greater percentage. Plus, I think there's a safety net valve to it. So we're pleased about that transportation funding mechanism is going forward. When you start looking at what we're calling ESER 2, what is formerly the Coronavirus Response and Relief Act, as you know, when it whittled down to Washington and to us as local districts, 10% of it goes to OSPI and 90% of it to us. So our allocation, our total allocation under that model is about 10.183 million. When you look at what the legislature is considering, and they are honoring districts' requests to get that ESER money, get it accessible to us now under these two bills that are moving through, they've said, okay, we're going to give you about 90% of your 90%. So in other words, right now, out of the total allocation of 742 million, they are creating an opportunity for us to access 668 million. For Everett, that drops it down to 9.1 million. And so what that means is, rather than them saying, we're going to fix the formula and give you state funding, we're going to give you the funding, and then you can apply to us for revenue recovery, or lost revenue. So what we can do is then submit to the state the amount of resources that is associated with that loss in revenue, and we will have that available to us sooner. So in order for that to happen, remember that ESER is allocated based upon title funding. The highest poverty districts will receive the most. Issaquah will receive 2 million, while Federal Way will receive somewhere in the 25 to 30 million range. And so they have a bill in place that is a stabilization bill. So a district with low poverty, such as Bellevue, lower poverty in terms of their free and reduced lunch percentage, will likely get more stabilization funding. So when it all mixes together, Everett's at about break even and probably will get a little bit of state stabilization funding, but we're watching those numbers as we go forward. And if they stay in place, we're well positioned to make it through the year as we have anticipated. And it will set us up in a great position for looking at our budget next year. So we also know that there are some requirements associated with this, and it's a building reentry plan that we're just waiting for the template due March 1st. It's also more intentional. They want to know what we're going to do about learning loss and what we're going to do about SEL. I'm not going to speak at all today because we don't know about the Biden proposal to the extent that that's going to layer on top. But as of today, things are moving forward very well for us. So what does that all result in? It results in a much more favorable, more certainty, and the work that we've done this year to reduce intentionally another 3.5 million has really allowed us to push that fund balance up from November, what we said was 7.4%, up to 10.2%. And we really know with the non-salary reductions that we've already have planned for this year and for this next year, which we'll talk about you with in March, that we're poised to be prepared now and continue to support that no layoffs and no furloughs commitment going forward. So in brevity, that's a snapshot for tonight, and good news, good celebration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for walking us through that. A lot of information there and a lot of moving parts still in terms of funding and what's actually going to be in the end. I'm going to turn it over. If we could pull the presentation down, thank you. I'll go ahead and turn it over and ask directors if they have any questions of Mr. Moore or comments. I'm not hearing or seeing any. Okay. I guess you did your job well tonight. Perfectly explained. Thank you. So Okay, with that, we are actually now at our, we're way ahead of schedule, and we are at our break. So, okay, we're like an hour ahead of schedule. This is we're buying back an hour we missed.
Let's keep going then. Yeah.
Push it.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards we just kind of keep moving on, and we're done in like 40 minutes at the most here. Well, maybe 45 minutes, but still that's less than a 2-hour meeting. Is everyone comfortable with that? Go home early, have some dinner?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and if somebody needs a snack, maybe they can just step away for a quick second.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Gunn again for a capital projects update.
All right, so thank you for that. Tonight we are providing an update on the status of our recently completed, current, and upcoming capital projects. The first thing I wanted to cover with you is that the schedule that we developed back when we passed the 2016 capital bond and levy is up on the screen in front of you there. We have performed very closely to the schedule. The kinds of things that you'll see that are extending out beyond the time where we are right now in 2021 are the HVAC projects, the flooring projects, roofing, and painting projects. It shows on this schedule that the first big project to be completed was elementary number 18, Tambor Creek, and that was the case. After that was North Middle School, and Woodside Elementary was shown to be complete in the fall of 2020. That one was the one big project that was impacted the most by COVID. So it produced some delays in our schedule, but other than that, we came really close to finishing that on time. So I wanted to just give you a visual look at Tambor Creek Elementary School. This one, again, was the biggest and the first project of our 2016 capital bond. That opened in the fall of 2019. This was North Middle School. The new portions of that project opened also in the fall of 2019, followed in the spring of 2020 by the modernization portions of the building and the site work. So that one is also completed. And then here are a listing of projects that are also completed since 2016. I'm going to just read some terms. I won't go through each one of these in detail, but I'll just tell you that the projects that you're going to see are composed primarily of HVAC upgrades, roofing replacement projects, safety and security upgrades, flooring projects, and fire alarm projects at a variety of locations. Other projects completed since 2016, replacing the ramps at all of our portable classrooms, that's completed. Painting projects, again, portable classrooms. Towards the near the bottom of the list, you'll see something called the distributed antenna system. That's a system that allows first responders to communicate with each other from inside our buildings, even if there's not a public signal for their communication devices. They can communicate anyway. And then also chiller and boiler. Those are parts of HVAC systems. Now we get to the third biggest project in the 2016 capital bond. This is Woodside Elementary School. Picture taken last week. I went out there and it's a fairly dramatic photo. And so I thought it would be a good one to start off the the Woodside Elementary School photo set for you. We have quite a few pictures from that project. This one is standing in the parking lot looking at the new office library building. So this is the building and the view that you see from the parking lot as a visitor looking towards the campus. It's the new front door to the campus. If you remember being there before, you would have seen the roofs of some of the buildings down in the courtyard from this view. That's what you would have seen. Here's another view of the main entrance to that new office building. By the way, I'm just going to give you an overview of the status of the construction there. we have finished and reoccupied all of the buildings now except for one of the classroom buildings. And that classroom building is building C. That will be completed in March, and then the site work will be completed in April. So in other words, next month, all of the buildings will be completed and reoccupied on that site, and the rest of the site work will be done in about 2 months. And that will finish up the 3 big major projects of the capital bond in 2016. This is a picture standing up on top of the roof. I wasn't the one that got up there. It was one of our construction managers. So standing on the roof of the new office building, looking due west towards the covered play area. And what you see between the camera and the covered play area is the brand new courtyard. This is where the office library building used to be. So again, if you were standing in this spot 2 or 3 years ago, you would have seen the office building and a bunch of roof structures in there. Now you see this gorgeous and spacious courtyard for the school to enjoy. It's also a secure courtyard, so there is no way a visitor can get into that without going through locked doors or through the office. This is standing a little bit closer to the covered play area, looking west. The green that you see there is synthetic turf, so it's artificial turf in the courtyard. And then there's some landscaping there. There will actually be a bench in the gap in the rock wreath that you see right there. There'll be a bench there. There may even be one there installed right now, because like I said, the picture was taken last week. And then this is looking back towards the new office library building from standing right near the courtyard. So this is looking due east from near the covered play area. And then these are 2 pictures taken. The one on the left there is taken from the upper landing, stair landing, looking through the new library into the courtyard. So again, it's just a gorgeous picture. The staff, every staff member that I talked to when I was out there was so excited about their new space. The picture on the right is taken looking again from a 2nd floor landing on the south side of the library towards the courtyard. You'll see these for yourself one day when we get out there and do some tours. And then this on the left is the refurbished gymnasium for the school. And then on the right, it's the refurbished cafeteria and stage. Off to the left of the stage there is, you can't see it. Again, you'll see it in person someday. It's the brand new kitchen with all new equipment and furnishings. This is standing near the stage in the cafeteria, looking towards the courtyard. And what you're looking at is some space that the principal plans to use for a STEM classroom space. And so it actually, as you can see, it has large operable partitions with glass in them that you can open up or close so that you can use it in a variety of ways. It's a very flexible space. It could even be used someday to expand the seating area of the cafeteria. But for now, it will be used as instructional space. And then this is the brand new playground with brand new play equipment just to the west of the covered play area of the school. Okay, now we're getting into projects that are currently underway. And when I say currently underway, I mean that they are either in design or construction right now. These that are not already in construction will be in construction most likely this summer. So we're going to be repaving the parking lot at Silver Firs Elementary this summer. The athletics building on the north side of the stadium property is actually undergoing upgrades to its HVAC system right now, along with upgrades to its fire alarm system. Everett High School will be getting the vocational building. It'll be getting work done this summer. Cedarwood Elementary School this summer will be doing the carpet and floor tile there. At the Everett High School vocational building, we're going to be purchasing some additional equipment and upgrading 2 additional classrooms at that site for the medical pathways program. There's that distributed antenna system again, this time at Gateway Middle School. That'll be done this summer. Reader boards at 5 schools. Two of these, the reader boards have already been ordered, and those are Hawthorne and Cascade. Those projects will be done by mid-July. The other three, Silver Lake, Penny Creek, and Silver Firs, we haven't yet ordered those. We're getting ready to, and those will be completed by September 15th. And then the water bottle filling stations at those locations, those are going to be done under one contract, and the completion date is mid to late summer for those projects. Then these are the remaining bond and levy projects. Again, I'm going to use the phrases that kind of generally describe what I'm talking about. Those are HVAC upgrades, roofing, flooring, fire alarm, painting, and then near the bottom, you'll see some additional property acquisition forthcoming. We expect to complete this work within the next 2 years. And I did want to point out that a number of these projects, the reason that we phased them so that they were going to be done later than earlier in the bond and levy program is that if you remember, the Cascade High School Science Building and Lowell, Jackson, and Madison were all due to be replaced or substantially modernized in the 2020 bond proposal. So we held off doing this work in case we had passed that bond, because you don't want to replace a roof and then 2 years later tear down the building if you can help it. So that explains some of the phasing that we did in the project. The final note I wanted to make is that in June 1st, we will bring to you a discussion in a special board meeting about a future capital bond or levy in 2022. We have already talked with you a couple of times about this, and if you do decide to proceed with that, then the election date would most likely be February 8th, 2022, and that would require board approval of the resolutions for those two bonds, the EPNO and the capital levy, by the end of November of this year. So we'll bring to you a discussion in June, and then look forward to very likely working towards a board resolution for you in November to consider approving. And that completes my presentation, and I'm here for questions or comments.
Thank you very much. I just want to say how excited I was when I saw those new photos of Woodside Elementary. To see that project and actually all of them come to fruition has just been so great. And I also really want to congratulate you and your team. 2016 was, 5 years ago now, and to have all those projects kept on time and stuck to that timeline that you put out that long ago is just really incredible. And it just builds such credibility around our Capitals facility program. And I hope that the public, more than anything, has an opportunity at some point to get inside Woodside Elementary and inside Tambor Creek and inside North Middle School so they can see what a renovated or rebuilt school looks like, because educational spaces have changed so much since years past, and they'll continue to do so. And this pandemic has probably even created some new opportunities and some new ideas in the way that we deliver instruction inside a building. But I just hope that more voters specifically have a chance to see those buildings.
Thank you. I did want to make just one comment that our communications department has just issued a contract to develop video virtual tours of North and Woodside, so that we can visually share those projects with our community while we wait for the actual time when we can go in person in those.
That is great, because like so many other things, parents are busy and community members are very busy, and to sometimes even have that event, it's hard to get there. So this will be a great way to be able to share that. So thank you for that update. And then I also want to make note of all the HVAC upgrades that I saw in all those slides and presentations, and how important that is right now, in particular for the air quality inside our buildings. So I'm just so glad, once again, something that was planned long before we had a pandemic, but yet more so, more important than ever. And then lastly, the water bottle filling stations just gets me really excited. It's just kind of one of those things where I think we should all be carrying a permanent water bottle around and filling it when we can, saving our earth.
Thank you
So
for
with
all
that,
the comments. Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to other directors for comments or questions.
Yeah, hi. I agree with the water bottles, and especially, you know, in this time of the pandemic, it's like you can still do them hands-free, I think, and everything. But just two questions, especially, you know, how much the board members likes touring the schools. I would love it if, as soon as it's ready, we could, if Darcy can give us a tour, that would be lovely. And then just want to, again, you know, thank the voters, but also with Woodside being our highest poverty school in the South End, just like North. Caroline, to your point of educational standards have changed, but these were, you know, older buildings, higher poverty schools. So they did look different because of their age, but not because of the poverty inside of them, from the newer schools that are surrounding them or that are competing against them when it comes to athletics, that we could level the playing field with the buildings in terms of people going back and forth between schools. Or you walk into Woodside, you do not see a high poverty school. You see a Everett public school, which I think is outstanding. But Mike, one question about the new reader boards. Are those going to be electronic reader boards?
Yes, all of those 5 will be electronic. One of them will be mounted on the building, and that's Hawthorne Elementary School. The others will be pole mounted. All of them will be Daktronic reader boards that will be compatible with and very similar to the one that we have out here by the espresso stand on Broadway by the CRC. And they will all be linked to the Daktronic system. And so in other words, our communications department will be able to control the messaging that goes out to all of those.
No, that's lovely, because you know, Shelley knows and Darlene know the time it takes for people to do that one at Penny Creek. But just one question about the one at Penny Creek, because it sits on technically a state highway, do we have to get anything from the state DOT for that to go from just that plastic one to electronic?
Yeah, that's in motion already.
Okay.
Yes.
But there is something that we have to work on because it's a highway.
Yeah, we actually, I'm not sure that pole is actually in the state's right of way. I suspect it's on our right of way.
Okay, but I just wasn't sure rules for visibility or something.
Yeah, actually what I think you're referring to is that Snohomish County and City of Mill Creek and City of Everett have signage codes that limit or regulate how big of a sign you can have and what type of sign, depending on how close you are typically to houses. So we're following all of the code requirements and moving forward, and we're getting ready to issue purchase orders for the Penny Creek, Silver Lake, and Silver Firs signage.
I think that one that's could be in front of Penny Creek, just like the one that's on Broadway. I don't know, it's got to be almost equal traffic on 132nd and on Broadway some times of the day to be able to promote our district. Yeah. I think and the school, I think is outstanding.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Mike, again, thank you for getting those reader boards done, particularly Hawthorne, much needed. And my question for you was, and maybe this is something that you can present to us at a different update or something like that, is what sort of considerations do we give to kind of energy efficient improvements when we're doing these modernizations and upgrades? So like water recapture systems and, you know, different ways of incorporating renewable energy and resources into our building plans.
Thank you. We will bring that at a future time for you. Thanks for the request.
And Mike, can you remind me, is North Middle School in particular, that had a particular designation, didn't it?
Oh, you mean I think all of our schools have to meet certain energy requirements or design criteria established by the state. And I can get that information from our staff and forward that on to you as well.
That'd be great.
Sure.
And Mike, I just thank you for this presentation. It's super informative, and looking at the projects coming to fruition is always great. And I think I was actually going to ask something similar to what Director Nichols was asking, but also I guess the designation, I was thinking some districts have schools that are designated LEED. Is it LEED designation that they have a certain amount of energy saving components? I know some of them have green roofs and things like that. Is that a part of the planning process when we're going out for new construction?
Yes, it is. Again, the state has certain requirements we have to adhere to. And I think it's called the Washington Schools Sustainability Protocol or something like that. I will get some more information and provide that to you.
That would be great. And then the other part of my question just has to do with, and I think I've probably asked this before, but it looks like June 1st will be the date where we can, as a board, kind of talk about what the next steps are for bonds and levies. And I'm wondering if leading up to that, where would be a good place to have kind of a conversation about what we want to see like in it? Because I think, and I don't know the best way to get from me asking the question to getting the answer, but just rethinking or kind of reimagining what school is going to look like and having that interpreted into a bond or levy package that we put out that next sometime in 2022. So I guess what would be the best way to do that?
Well, so far the conversations that the board had in the summer workshop, and then I think in right after that in October, identified early June is the next time to bring information to the board. And I think at that time the focus was going to be on a capital levy conversation and a conversation about an educational programs and operations levy. The idea of a bond, I think, was, while it wasn't a formal vote in the summer workshop, I think the conversation was around holding off on a bond until 2024, most likely.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was trying to figure out is if with the holding off, just at what point we can start having conversations about what properties look like, what we want schools to look like, that whole thing. And so I'm just trying to figure out where to insert that, if it's before our June conversation, if it's post June, but pre 2022. But I just feel like I'm just not sure where that fits in.
Sure. I'm thinking it could very well take place at the June discussion. It is a board work session, so it will be a hour and a half or 2-hour session designed completely to talk about capital programs and EP&O levies.
And so when you say talk, though, it's going to be back and forth, right? Just making sure. So it's because sometimes I feel like, if we do the presentation of what we should have versus kind of the back and forth of kind of like the work group, kind of like the capital bond work group that we had, that was super, super beneficial. But there was a lot of small group conversation and back and forth about what we should be doing in that area. So just putting that out there, just because it'd be great to get it on the table.
Mike,
go
may
ahead.
I ask a couple questions? Mike, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. I really enjoyed it. On your capital projects update, you mentioned roof replacement at Jacksonville and Cascade High School Science Building and the Everett High School main building. And I know you mentioned you didn't want to do a roof replacement if the next thing was to ask for a bond to change out and modify them. And I understand that. Are we now talking that this particular roof replacement, we're going to see what we need to do to go forward with it? Are we going to continue that work, or are we going to then hold it off until maybe June so we can speak of what would be in that capital levy, when we know that, I'm a little concerned with roofs. When we had the roof at Gateway, we don't want to have a situation where we have a roof that's constantly failing and we're just pushing it off until we can talk about bonds or capital levies. Are we going forward with this as a repair item, or what's the plan?
That's a really good question. And I feel the same way about HVAC systems that you feel about roofs. The work that you saw on the slide that said upcoming work, that is for the next 2 years. It is not for this summer. So we still have time to talk about whether and how we're going to proceed with those other projects. Some of that really does depend on what projects might be included in a 2022 capital levy program. So that is a good question, and we haven't yet answered that, but we will over the next year or so.
Right. We do know the status of those particular roofs now. We understand that we may wish to replace them further on down the road, but we don't anticipate any failures taking place between now and say 2 years or whatever. Is that correct?
I would say we don't anticipate them, that they will fail in the next year to 2 years. It is a possibility. We know that the roofs are near the end of their lives, so they do need to be replaced.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
President Mason, perhaps we should, to Director Berg's point, maybe we should start planning for an extra session to discuss kind of levies and things like that, either prior to or just to kind of have a conversation as a board. Maybe we need to talk about having an additional special meeting for that so we can address those concerns and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. Does that sound fairly reasonable?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess what I'm wondering is I'm not entirely clear at this point what the discussion is prior to June 1 that we would have before then that we wouldn't be able to do at that June meeting, because we have 90 to 120 minutes and it is a work session, which is much more of a less presentation, more of a conversation kind of session.
I get the feeling that the conversation may take longer than that. So not that we necessarily have to do one before it, but maybe set up some contingency that, let's say we have some more things to work out, that after that initial June meeting that we have a plan to continue the conversation if need be. I think that kind of contingency plan would be helpful.
I think one of the big concerns we would do is during our summer workshop, we can definitely continue that discussion after the June 1st in August when we have that. And still it's outside of the necessary plan to, think about what should be in and when we should plan for a capital levy or a bond. So I think the June 1st is a good opportunity to start the discussion and then continue it and really work. We have a lot more time in our workshop to continue it if it does need more time.
And that is the approach that's been taken over the last 3 or 4 years, was a fairly lengthy segment of time allocated in the August board workshop. It's usually a 2-day workshop, and there's usually a pretty good amount of time allocated to this topic if the board so desires.
President Mason, if I may.
Go ahead, jump in.
So I just wanted to kind of echo what Director Nichols was saying. I think for me, I think even if we could just make the space for it running over an hour and a half, I think sometimes, and I could just be completely by myself in this, but it feels like we just kind of constrain ourselves to the hour and a half and we don't have a lot of time for organic dialogue around important issues. And so then they kind of get pushed off to the next meeting or the next work session. And so since those are so few and far between, and this is such a huge issue, and we might be looking at it differently than in the past 2 or 3 years. I mean, even this last bond cycle, having community groups, right? They took weeks upon weeks, I mean months, to really come up with those bond proposals. And it was based on a lot of lived experience, organic conversations, thinking and rethinking, and literally coming up with a complete 180. When we all walked into that process, we literally came out with something 100% different, I think, as most of you can attest to. And that just was because we talked, we just sat and talked. And so I think giving our board that same kind of space and privilege would be awesome. Either on the June 1st day with a little extra time if needed, or something like a 2-part one that was fairly close together.
I'll work with Dr. Salzman, and we'll see if maybe we can even move up that June meeting into maybe May. I think there is a little value in not doing it too soon because of the way that the world looks right now. I want to make sure that before we put something in front of voters, that the economics of our community are trending in a positive direction, if possible. And then the other thing too is, one thing that we might want to think about is, do we need, so the bond, the group that you were a part of, Director Berg, for helping determine the bond was for a very specific purpose for that group to bring a recommendation to the superintendent and then to the board. And I want to make sure that I appreciate, I think there is a lot of opportunity to have more conversation around capital facilities. I also want to make certain that we as a board are not doing the work and creating the package, as it were, because I feel like the community did such an amazing job of that last time. So I'm not sure how we want to proceed on that, but that would certainly be a discussion that we'd want to have next time we bring this topic up, which we'll try and make happen sooner than later.
I just don't think we would do ourselves any disservice by talking more, and making time to talk more together. Especially if one of us, even if it's only one of us that has a concern about it, I think as a team, I think it's great for us to kind of make time to sit down and talk whatever it is through. So anything we can do there, that would be great.
I agree. And I have to say that some of the Zoom, as great as it has been to be able to move our meetings forward, isn't always the best venue for that more authentic and organic conversation amongst ourselves. So we'll definitely find an opportunity to make some time for that. Are there any other comments or questions on the topic before we move on?
Madam Chair, may I have a point of privilege just to make a quick comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I know you said it best, but to our public, I just want the public to know this, because sometimes the board cannot compliment themselves, but to have your schools built on time, that means our board and the construction department's done an amazing job. And when the public questions certain things, and they've been our supporters, but when they question certain things, all our schools have been built on time. And shout outs to Mr. Kraus and Mr. Walker for the work that they're doing. And for even the reader boards, just so you have the history of the reader boards. If I might, Director Nichols, just call your name out on this one. I know when we got the need for a board at Hawthorne, 2 days later, Mike and his team got it going. So that's the collaboration I don't think our public knows a lot of times. This is how we've improved as a system. And it's kudos to the board and staff working together. If you've been to Woodside, I know many haven't during the COVID, but what a great facility. But also what you see is, I think Stephen Kraus lives there, okay? I mean, I've not seen him leave that building since I've been here visiting, okay? I've been here, and just when you go visit a school, you see him all the time, okay? And it is an amazing facility. But schools don't get built on time in a lot of communities, okay? They don't. And that's how people lose trust. So when we talk about trust and transparency, the construction department has done an amazing job with the financial department to make sure these schools are built on time. And we need reader boards, and we're getting reader boards, right, Mike? I know we've set that time frame, you and I. We want it to start next school year, and we're going to have those reader boards next school year. And that is the completion of doctrine work that we're doing here. So we don't get to brag to the public on a lot of things, but I want the public to know that the board holds people accountable, and people are doing what they need to do to get schools done and have the correct reader boards and schools that really need us the most. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. With that, I think we will go ahead and move on. We're at 13.0 unfinished business, and tonight we do not have any unfinished business, but we do have several items of new business. And the first one, 14.01, is the appointment of board representative to the Student Representative Selection Committee. So this is a director that would help with the interview process and help select our next student representative. I have to compliment the board because we've done an amazing job in years past. We have brought some really outstanding candidates and representatives to help serve with us. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for discussion and get your thoughts.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to do. I think I've only done it once, but just ever since students have been on our board, I think we have learned so much. And so I really appreciate Robert Polk's role in working with the high schools to bring us the best students. Not always the A+ students, not always the ASB student. It really is the right student. So thank you, Robert, for your strong work on this.
Thank you.
And I'd be willing to do it again to help you, Robert, finding that student.
Okay, the school is, just to give a little background, the school is Sequoia. I know Director Berg is the liaison to Sequoia High School. Director Lassane did it in 2018, I believe, and Director Mitchell, I believe you were in 2017, and Director Nichols did it last year. Yeah.
Madam President, I would be honored if Director Mitchell would serve in this role for Sequoia, and I'm just excited to see more students, amazing students, rotate onto our board if she's willing to do it.
Oh, thank you, April.
Sequoia is awesome. I can attest to that. I was on one of the boards. I was one of the representatives at Sequoia that chose the student representative from there, and I can truly tell you it's awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Last year was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. It was, solid candidates all the way around. Really a chance to be impressed by our students. And so Director Mitchell, I hope you enjoy the process this year as well.
And I do appreciate the tough decisions, just like the superintendent scholar interviews that I've done in years past. Make it hard on us.
Yeah, I agree. Well, if everyone, it sounds like I'm hearing agreement that we are all excited to have Director Mitchell help us with our next student representative selection.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that means we're going to move on to 14.02, which is policy 2401. And Mr. Fleckenstein is going to, we have quite a few policies and they are all very much related. And so Mr. Fleckenstein, go ahead and just present them one after the other, because I think they're going to go rather quickly.
Yeah, well, thank you. And tonight we have 8 policy revisions for the board's consideration. The first of these revisions apply to 7 agenda items, numbers 14.02 through 14.07 and item 1409, and comply with new rules adopted to the State Board of Education for granting students mastery-based credits that acknowledge educational opportunity gaps. The new rules require districts to maintain disaggregated data regarding the students receiving mastery-based credit and periodically review that data for disproportionality per Washington Administrative Code 180-51-051. As the policy language revisions are identical in each of these 7 policies, they are presented this evening as a group for your consideration. The proposed revisions to items 1402 through 1407 and 1409 have been previously reviewed by the legal counsel and superintendent's executive cabinet. And as an example here in 2415, which is item 1409, you'll see the revisions here have changed the language to mastery-based credit, in addition to the added language here around reviewing student data for disaggregated data for disproportionality.
Thank you. Directors, do you have any questions regarding these policies? Okay, I think pretty straightforward. We will go ahead and move those to second reading. And am I to understand that item 14.0 policy 2409 is different?
Yes, it is slightly different, Director Mason, and I will be brief. Our last policy this evening is policy 2409, granting equivalency credit. The proposed revisions also comply with the new rules adopted by the State Board of Education for granting students mastery-based credits. In addition to the revised language presented in the previous seven policies this evening, language has been added to this policy regarding the awarding of master credits in computer science, even for similar or equivalent high school level courses taken in 7th or 8th grade. The proposed revisions have been previously reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's executive cabinet. And those are revisions I just described begin here on page 2 around computer science credit. And specifically, this is the language that was in the other 7 previously presented. This is the credit that's awarded to 7th and 8th grade students taking equivalency computer science courses.
Thank you. Do any directors have questions regarding this policy? Okay, hearing none, we will move policy 2409 to second reading as well. Thank you, Mr. Fleckenstein. Dr. Salzman, can you please provide us with an overview of our upcoming agenda items?
Yes, and before I do that, Madam Chair, just for a point of privilege, I want to remind everybody this is Black History Month, and as I went through some schools and also on through Zooms, the great activities that are happening in our school system. So I want to just acknowledge that. And it is President's Day coming up. So I want to remind everybody about that and Valentine's Day. So I wanted just to engage our community, those things that are happening. And as we continue on our Black History Month, salutes to our staff for doing all the good work that we're doing. Okay, at our special meeting, the board will discuss the following on February 18th, the strategic plan refresh, integrated technology plan. And then on February 23rd, the board will discuss the school reopening status update. And then on March 9th, we have an iReady update, multiple policies for second reading, Everett PTSA council recognition, our enrollment outlook, the January financial report, and our board trial of 2021-2022. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm interested to see what that travel schedule looks like.
Yes, ma'am.
Not much this past year.
No.
Cost savings to the district this time. Okay, 16.0 is executive or closed session, and we do not have an executive or closed session tonight, which takes us to 17.0, which is adjournment. This has been a very concise, brief meeting. I appreciate everyone's effort to stay on time and get us out at a reasonable dinner hour. I also want to mention that we do have 2 days, President's Day and Tuesday, the district will be closed. And I hope all of you take an opportunity to rest and relax and rejuvenate. You've been working tremendously hard to get our students back in the classroom, and you all deserve a little break. So, as do, I'm sure, our students and our parents. So I hope you all enjoy your time off, and we will see you for sure back on February 18th, if not before then. And so I would like to say this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Be well, be safe.
Bye, everyone.